Hello. Today I'm going to be talking to you about sampling vocals and turning them into stuff that's not vocals. So today I'm going to be sampling a very well-known vocal, a Beyonce vocal, and I'm going to be turning it into a nice ethereal pad that can be used for anything, and it's not going to be recognized. So this is sort of a advanced-ish technique, but very basic in its actual application. So let's get straight into it. You can see here in the session I have a little snippet of Sweet Dreams by Beyonce. I'll play it for you.
Not even death could make us part.
So simple bit there. Obviously I can't just use that and put that into a tune because it's going to be recognised and I'm going to have a whole lot of legal problems and have to pay a lot of money. But what we're going to do is take a sustained part of this sound and sample it. And turn it into a multi-sample, which we're then going to use to make a different sound. So let's get straight into it. What we need to do first of all is find a full, solid, sustained note, which you can kind of see this area will probably be it. So let's just play.
Not even death could make us part.
So it's sort of the second half of the art bit there. So I'm going to get rid of all of this, see what we get from here. What I'm going to do is keep in all of that vibrato because that's going to add to our sound. So I'm going to put a tiny fade in at the start. There we go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce this in place. Now it's important that we bounce everything in place constantly, making sure that everything is always, we can see all the steps that we've taken. So I'm going to right click on this and bounce this in place. And make sure that it mutes the original. We're still going to see it, but it's going to mute the original. So we're going to call this one to stretch, or if I can spell to stretch. Press OK. There we go. And then we've got a version now to stretch. This is muted, but we can always go back to the original. So what we're left with is this. I'm going to cut the end there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to time stretch this. Now this is going to incur some form of artifacts, which a lot of the time people don't want, but this is going to kind of add to the texture in our sound. If you go down to the bottom corner of any track in Logic, as long as it's audio, not MIDI, if I just zoom in here quickly, if you go to the bottom corner and hold down Option or Alt, you can see the arrow, the icon changes to this one, which this means instead of being in trim mode like this, it is now in time stretch mode. So if I just zoom out, we can then grab this whilst holding it down and time stretch it. So now we get this. So that wobble is still there. We've stretched it. Now we're going to add some effects to this. So over here, I'm going to go to the reverb menu. I'm going to keep it all stock plugins for this, so I'm not going to use any third party. So we're going to go Chroma Verb. I'm going to take all the bass out, fairly wet, a couple of seconds long on the reverb. Maybe a little bit longer. Let's go for a vocal hall, a bit more depth to it. Lovely. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bounce this in place. So right click, bounce in place. We're going to call this one to sample. There we go. So now we have all of those three. Lovely. Now we're going to sample this. Logic's new sampler gives you the option to do this very quickly. So I can either drag and drop this down into, instead of having to right click and do convert to new sample, I can physically drag the audio file down and then go into quick sampler original, optimized, and so on. I'm going to stick to the original way. I'm going to right click and I'm going to convert to new sampler track. Here it's going to ask you where you want to put it. We're going to put it into a sampler. We're going to use the region because we're using the whole file for this. And we're going to start this at C2. Could be C3, basically anywhere towards the middle of the keyboard. This gives you the option to stretch that sample across lower notes and higher notes so we can then play those lower and higher. So make sure it's regions because we're dealing with the whole region. We're going to convert it to a sampler and we're going to press OK. Now, you can see it's bounced it in place. We have this to sample version and it's just got a MIDI note in there which basically plays that sample. We're going to get rid of this MIDI region and I'm going to go into the actual sound itself here. So this is the sampler that it's given us. And if I go down to mapping, just down here, you can see there's our sample, but it doesn't play. Look, I can play it here, but I can't play all the other notes. We need to physically stretch it across all of the notes here. So now, as you can hear though, because they're pitched up or down, the timing is different. In the new version of Logic, what you can do is turn on flex down here. Now what this flex will do is basically now it gives you all of those samples playing at the same time. It's pretty nice, right? So this is where we can get a bit more interesting. If we go up to our synth side, we can turn the filter on, bring the filter down. Go down an octave. Now we can start to mess around with the enveloping here. We're going to go envelope 1 for the amp. So now we've got that sort of texture. What we're going to do now is go down to the sample and add a loop in to this. Mode, we're going to go alternate, looping. We're going to have the start here, and I don't want to have that vibrato part in. So we now have this. That's forward. If I go alternate, that's pretty nice. But what we need is more of a crossfade between those parts. So we're going to turn up the crossfade all the way up. This is in samples, the crossfade. So remember, there's 44,100 samples per second here. So we need to drag this up fairly high. So now we get this. Let's go down further. So we can see that the sample's a little bit more. There we go. So now we're getting that more ethereal sound. Now remember, there's no effects on this. We've just got the reverb from the initial noise. If I go back up to the modulators here, I can change the length of that release. Let's go up to the synth area, open up the filter a bit more, and we're going to add in some of this drive. Now we can start to add in more effects. So now we've got the original sample. We can go in, we can put some more reverb on this. Again, we're going to stick stock. So turn this up a bit. I'm going to want this to be quite kind of open. So we're going to go concert hall. Actually, a synth hall, I think we'll pick for this one. All the bass out, the reverb again. Maybe a little bit longer. See what we get from this. We're getting there. Now I want a little bit of movement, but I don't want the movement to be sort of like a tremolo, a left and a right. I'm going to do this with delays. So underneath the reverb, I'm going to go to the delay menu and I'm going to pick stereo delay. And a good way to get this working is you can still have the same amounts either side. So quarter note, but the deviation is going to be slightly different in its percentage. And then we're going to feed them in slowly to each other. So now, if I put this up to about 39%, we'll get we get that sort of shifting left and right. The last thing, remember, these are all on the track itself. These aren't parallel effects. These are going to be altering the actual sound of the track itself. These aren't going to be copied over to another track to add these effects. These are going to be in series, so they're destructive effects, essentially. If we move down, I'll go to the modulation effects, and I'm going to pick a chorus, the standard stock Logic chorus. That's pretty nice. Let's go back to the track itself. Let's find the zone. What I want to do is I want to pitch this down a little bit because it is a little bit too high at the moment. So I'm at the lowest octave and it's still very high. So I'm going to pull the pitch down here and I'm going to put it down 2 octaves and then go back to the center pitch. So when I go down, so basically what we've made there is a really nice warm pad that we've got full control over as if it was a synthesizer. But remember, if I go back to this track here, it came from this sound. And now instead of that, we have this as a sample. Beautiful. Now the last thing we're going to do is save this as a channel strip setting. So we can come down to settings here, save channel strip setting as. This will save it to your Logic's directory. This is going to be an instrument track, and we're going to call this Beyonce pad. So now whenever I want to go back to this track, I can always find it in my list here of presets, Beyonce pad. So we've gone from a standard Beyonce vocal to a nice, warm, open, ambient pad, great for beds, great for filling in those gaps in the tracks. And there's no way that that would sound like you would know that that was from Sweet Dreams in a Beyonce track. So, yeah, basic sampling used to make something that sounds really posh and lovely. I've got an idea. I'm going to do the same thing, but using a hardware sampler, the MPC. So we're going to take the MPC and try and make that pad sound again. So follow me. MPC, here we go. So, right, how are we going to do this? So we've got the track here. So we've got the full a cappella. I've chopped out the same bit. So let me just play this one. Ready? Right, let's chop that out. So discard the rest. Bosh. So we have this. Let's normalize that so it's nice and loud. Put a fade in at the start. So let's try the fade in. Excellent. And then a fade out at the end, just because we're not animals. So fade out. There we go. Well, what have we got now? It's pretty good, actually. So, right, let's... we'll call that... That's it. Just name of the sample, that'll do. So, right, see if we get this to work. Right, let's go to a new key group and let's see what we can get from that. I mean, that might work, actually. Wait, let me see if it got pad perform. Pad perform. Horrendous. It's not actually that bad. It sounded shocking to start with. Let's get in and mess around with some of these sounds. So, right, let's go for an EQ and filter first. So let's put a filter on it. Let's put maybe... It's not too bad. Let's maybe put another filter on, but this time a high pass filter. So let's change that to high pass. That's kind of nice. Reverb. Drape it in reverb. Let's go for air reverb. Nice and long. Let's give it some input width. It's not bad, bit of delay. Air delay. Let's go quarter note. Feedback long. It's kind of nice, actually. I think I need to change what the actual sample works like. So let's go in. Let's have a look at the sample. pretty cool. Let's make sure it's all the key groups. Let's put a loop in there. So. Right. Let's go forward and back. It's kind of nice there. That's actually really nice. Right, let's go and change the envelope. So the amplitude envelope, there we go. Change the filter a bit. I mean, it's kind of lit, to be fair. Let me see. Let's go back to the group. Let's change this secondary filter. Turn down the volume as it's very loud. Let's go down even further. As you can see, it was actually quicker on the hardware. It was actually much quicker using just the hardware, which is very weird, actually. I wasn't expecting that to happen, especially as I didn't have a clue what I was doing from the start. I thought I'd just chop it. So, yeah.